And so what I'll do is when this is over, I'll give you the link to that cloud recording. You can just let me know when it's downloaded, and then I'll delete it from my cloud because I'm at my cap on limit recordings. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining. And so we're going to cover some social media stuff today. I'll do my best to answer your questions. So to start with, there's a few different social media platforms, and a big question people often have is like, which one should I focus on? And they just have different audiences and different purposes and different ways where they're strong. So you look at Facebook, and 70 to 80% of Canadians are on Facebook. It's a popular one. They do skew a bit older in terms of the ones who use it regularly. And it is a place that is really good for advertising. The advertising platform is well built and allows you to get a lot of bang for your buck if you're going to pay for advertising. Organic growth is harder, but there are ways to work on that too, and I'll go through some of that. Instagram tends to be younger people. It's about 30% of Canadians for Instagram. And the Instagram platform for advertising is connected to Facebook. So you can run a Facebook ad and have it port right through to Instagram without any extra work. You just click a button. And then Twitter is a very high profile social media, even though it is only about 20% of Canadians on it. And of those, most Twitter content is generated by the top like 5% of users. Like it's just a lot of people posting, or a few people posting a lot, and then quite a few people absorbing it. The people who are on Twitter do tend to be very high visibility, high profile. So politicians are on Twitter, journalists are on Twitter. You look at all the brands are on Twitter, and it's because of the way that it's structured. It really prioritizes recency, which makes it good for news. And so that is where people who participate in the news, either as reporters or as people who shape the news, want to be. And that's, of course, then useful for advocates, because those are the people we often need to convince or make aware of what we're doing. There are a few other platforms that I won't cover today. TikTok, only about 9% of Canadians are on TikTok. It's the hot new thing, but also it is still a pretty limited subset. But you do find a lot of cross-posting between these platforms. And so you've certainly seen TikTok videos on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and vice versa. And that is something to keep in mind for your content you create. A lot of it can be cross-posted. You can use it in multiple avenues. And then Nextdoor is another very small one. And that one is built to be location-based. And people can find people who are in their community, their neighbors. And they're added to a community group automatically based on their postal code. And not a lot of users yet in Canada. There's quite a few in the US. But that is something that...
What's the name of that, Tim?
Nextdoor. I think the site is like Nextdoor app. Yeah. So, and that's pretty new. With any of these platforms, all of them are driven by an algorithm. The basic shape of a social media platform at this point is there is what's called a feed, which is sort of all of the people that are in your network. Their posts may go into that feed, as well as posts that the algorithm determines you may want to engage with from people outside your feed. They use a couple of different ways of deciding that. And of course, posts that people pay to put into your feed. And then there's also usually a messaging component where you can directly message. We'll talk more about that because there's some really good strategies for engagement from that. It's important to keep in mind the algorithm is designed to maximize engagement, not necessarily what you like, just what it thinks you will respond to, which is why you get outrage stuff trending pretty readily. People do respond to it. They're like, wow, I hate that. And that registers as engagement. There's a few factors that the algorithm looks at, and it's worth understanding them. They do vary between platforms, but the general gist is the same. It will look at things you've engaged with before, who you follow, what you've posted, hashtags you've used, current trends, and so on. But then also, it really looks at different mechanisms of engagement. So if you add media to a post, image, or especially a video, that will be ranked higher by the algorithm in terms of promoting it to other people's feeds. Recency, particularly on Twitter, more recent things get a higher weight in the algorithm. Makes sense, as older things fall off. Engagement, of course, if you are posting and it gets a lot of likes, a lot of retweets or replies or reposts or reshares, whatever, that weight's higher, and that builds because as you get more engagement, it's shown to more people, they engage with it more, and it builds in the cycle. The literally first few minutes are really critical in assessing that. If you get like several likes in the first 5 minutes, that's to the algorithm a sign that it's going to get a lot if it gets pretty far. So having people respond quickly to a new post is quite valuable. Hashtags are another thing that can add weight. If you are using hashtags that are popular at the moment, that can be prioritized a little higher by the algorithm. And account activity matters. If you are an account that regularly creates content, especially engaging content, the algorithm rewards that. So there is consistency value when you are creating your plans for posting. You do kind of want to assess as you're using your platforms what you're trying to do. And there are different things that you're trying to do. Visibility is kind of the cornerstone. Most people are trying to just get seen, be made aware, have people be made aware of what's happening. But people also use social media for organizing. They use it for advocacy, where they're drawing attention to decision makers. Use it for events, sharing events and organizing events that way. There's different ways to go about those different things. And so it's worth deciding in advance, what is the purpose I am drawing from for this particular social media platform? It may be several, but just know what you're trying to do as you're creating your strategy. I'm going to go through a little bit about how we use it for advocacy. I think that's one we do a lot of, particularly on Twitter. We do this, and with Twitter, like I said, it's a lot of influencers, journalists, politicians, and it's a good way to get visibility for things that they might not otherwise reply to. Like they may, they get a million emails, and they the staff sorts them and so forth. But the thing about Twitter is that when you are tagging them, yes, they see it, but it's public. So other people also see it. So there's extra weight to it. And they're very aware. Their staff are keeping track of what's happening there. And they're aware of not only the quantity, but also the timing and who is doing it. So one of the tactics we often use is what's called the tweet storm. And the tweet storm is just mobilizing a lot of people to tweet the same thing or the same general type of thing at the same time, which gets a lot of additional visibility because it does play into the algorithm where now, oh, this is a topic that people are talking about. This hashtag is getting used a lot. People are engaging with it. So the way that we do that is we will schedule it in advance. We'll tell people, excuse me, for example, tomorrow, we're going to have a day of action. We're going to have a lot of people out in the field doing in real life actions. And we're asking them as part of that to get a photo from that action that they can then tweet out and use the hashtags we've selected. At the same time, we're going to amplify that. We have Lead Now's Twitter account and other influencer Twitter accounts are on board that are going to follow that hashtag. You can just search on that hashtag in Twitter and it will show you all the posts with that hashtag. And you can sort by like the top posts, which will choose by the most engaged posts, but you can also sort by the timing, the latest. So we will sort by the latest, and as they come through, we will retweet them. So there's more engagement on them and more engagement on the hashtag. We will reply to them, which replies generate extra engagement. And that will all be geared towards driving visibility on it. We're also going to get photos from them and tweet them out ourselves. Alongside of that, we email our list with a link to a tweet that we have put up. We call it a hero tweet at the beginning of the day and say, hey, if you've got Twitter, can you retweet this right now? And what that does is it drives a lot of very rapid engagement with the hero tweet, which helps to get the hashtags trending, which drives further engagement, and also gets that tweet to be a top tweet for the day. What we also will do is generate group chats. So Twitter has a DM function, that direct message function, and we will generate group chats in advance of the day of action, where we'll find like what we call micro-influencers, accounts with 1,000 to 5,000 or so followers, and we'll reach out, particularly ones that engage on topics we care about or that the day of action is about, and say, hey, like on such and such a date, we're going to do this tweet storm. Can we ask you to amplify a tweet? We're going to put it live at 11 in the morning. And if they say yes, we'll add them to the group chat with a few other people in that chat along the same caliber of account. And then when the time comes, we'll put the tweet in that chat and say, here it is, it's live, let's go. And because it's a direct message, even the bigger accounts, they get a lot of notifications. So they may not notice a notification like a tag, but a direct message is its own separate category for them. So they see them, and a lot of people have them set to go to their phones. And so it's a good reminder to those accounts to go ahead and engage with it right away. Those group chats can be maintained after the day of action. And we have, there's a group called Climate Messengers, which basically spawned out of this exact strategy. We used this tactic with them on an event, and they just stuck with it and became kind of their own group doing this exact sort of advocacy work.
Yeah, I'm part of that group. I know
Yeah,
all about
there you
that.
go. Yeah, exactly. That was originally Lead Now Volunteers, and they kind of split up and started doing the social media tweet storm stuff. Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. One thing that we did on the Bernie campaign was like a multi-tiered structure of those group chats, where there were people who would organize a group chat like that of 20 to 30 different micro-influencers. And then those people who were organizing that group chat were themselves in a higher level group chat. And so the staff team would put the post in there and say, like, here's today's post, put it in that hub group chat, and then they would all disseminate it down to their group chats. And that enabled a very wide network, which is how you could see Bernie tweets getting boosted up quite quickly through the ranks. So, and that was a pretty regular thing. They did that right through the primary. It wasn't every day, probably 3-4 times a week, where they would put a post through. Not everyone did every one of them. The expectation was pretty low, but people did choose to engage and did enjoy it, and it was a good way to get extra engagement on things. I actually have a little guide which I can send you that describes how to build that kind of thing and how to like do the outreach and all that. So I'll actually forward that to you so you have that documentation. Let's see, I have any other questions you asked. How to grow engagement. Yeah, if you have members who are actively engaged who can be part of a social media team, that's great. And just coming up with a way to get them notified of the expectation of when you're going to do tweets or posts on whatever platform, so they can comment and they can reply and engage, then that's really valuable. Just making sure they know what the structure is. It's less of a tech issue and more of an organizing challenge, right? Just figuring out how to get people's schedules aligned and how they're notified when there's new content and so on. Like Lead Now has not done this yet, but one of our plans is to build a social media team that does amplification work. And so we'll be working hard to solve that particular issue ourselves.
Tim, if I could just jump in, it sounds like it would be important for us to get that list of micro-influencer accounts organized in advance and get those people set up to know April 20th, is our launch date, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yes.
The way to do that. So there's a few ways to go about that, of course, but one of the ways you can do that. So I often will just build like a spreadsheet, or I like to use Airtable, which is just like an old database app. It's free, but it has a nice input form, which makes it really easy to use. So you can equip volunteers with a little workflow that says, like, go on Twitter, go on Facebook, look for pages that engage with this kind of content, these hashtags like climate action, etc. Look for people who are replying and engaging with those tags, and then have one batch of volunteers who just identifies those accounts and inputs them into the spreadsheet or the database, and then a second team that goes through and reviews them, and the critical information will be things like follower count, what topics are they engaging with, what location are they in, if you're doing like geographical areas and so on. Get that kind of information gathered. And then that second team is the outreach team. They looks at that, they prioritize who to talk to first, and then do the outreach. And there's a tracker for, on X date I reached out to Y account, and then waits for a response. And when you're dealing with those sorts of accounts, I usually advise giving them a couple different options for how to engage. Like a big ask of, I want to be part of this team, that may be too much, but you give them the option, like, okay, well, if you can't be part of a regular team, I'd love to have you just amplify our stuff. Can you just either follow our page, join this group chat, or something of that nature? You can also use, so Facebook has what's called groups as well as pages, and groups are a pretty good way to organize teams of people on social media, because then they're already on the platform. And you can, same thing, you can put content in a group. If it's a public group, people can share right out of the group to their pages, which helps for amplification, and also invite people into the group. so it can grow. Like there's lots of groups around, like neighborhoods have groups, but you also see issues-based groups. There's certainly plenty of climate action groups. The big value of pages versus groups is that pages allow you to do paid ads. And so they are really your only vehicle for doing those kinds of paid ads, which groups you cannot do. Speaking of advertising, I just wouldn't use ads on Twitter. It just doesn't work in my experience. Facebook is good for ads, and Instagram is good for ads for various purposes, not all purposes, but some. But Twitter just no one cares about the ads there.
But I was wondering about the promoted ads on Facebook. We're not going to be a third-party registered nonprofit, Climate Fast or OCEC. Neither is registered, but I thought that Climate Fast could spend up to $500. That would be maybe a good way to use the money that we're allowed to use. So I bet I have no idea. You know, you said before when we talked about Facebook in the past that there are ways you can select your audience. So I think maybe we need to understand how to do that for the ads, because then you reach the people you want to reach more.
Yeah, that's a great, so yes, $500 is my understanding for the limit. If you go over that, between 500 and 5,000, you have to register. And if you go over 5,000, you also have to get an auditor. Registering actually isn't that difficult. It's just like a form to do. But if you don't want to do that, 500 is the cap. I will also add as a disclaimer that I am not an election lawyer, so please do not consider any of this as legal advice. For Facebook ads, so I think I don't use, this is my work computer, so I actually don't have Facebook logged in, so I don't get distracted. A lot of ADHD. I actually can't screen share and show you one on this computer, which I wish I thought to do that before. But the targeting on the ads, so there's two layers of this. There is the basic Facebook ads targeting that any account can use. And that is when you go into your page, it will offer you the chance to boost a post, which is one thing you can do, or to actually just create an ad campaign. And I usually prefer to create the ad campaign rather than boost the post. Boosting the post is easier, but creating the ad campaign gives you more variables to control when you create it. As far as the targeting, you can choose geographically, which I often do because I'm doing, by riding for voting. You can do it as precisely as an FSA, which is the first 3 letters of your postal code. So like a few blocks, usually in a city anyway. So you could get down, like I live in M8Y. And so M8Y would be like this area of Southern Etobicoke. It's more than a few blocks. It's like, there's like probably 6 of those in Etobicoke. So that's pretty precise, geographically speaking. You can also target by pages they've liked. So you may target, like in the past, I've done pages that like Justin Trudeau and Maclean's magazine and things that are like liberally to try and get liberal voters and so on. I will note that they really have clamped down on the kind of targeting you can do issues-wise because of Cambridge Analytica and all of that, which is good for the health of democracy, but makes it harder for us in terms of advocacy targeting. But you can still do it. You will require a certification by Facebook if you are going to do political advertising of any kind. And it does take some time because it's physical mail, because they have to prove that you live in Canada. So I would advise you to start that process now. It takes at least a week because they have to get the digital information from you and then send you a letter, and then you type in a code when you get the letter. I will find you the link to the process for how to do that. It's not difficult. It just takes a little while. They have to physically mail you. And then they will probably periodically check your ID. They'll ask you to submit like photo ID to prove that you're a resident of Canada if you're going to do ads in Canada on those kinds of things. Kathleen, did you have a question? Sorry.
No, sorry.
Okay. No worries. When you do your targeting for your Facebook ads, it will give you an estimate of how many views you'll get. It'll also give you options for what you want to prioritize. Do you want to prioritize views? Do you want to prioritize click-throughs to a website? Do you want to prioritize donations? I don't recommend using it for donations usually, but it's very good for getting views, and it can be good for driving conversions to like a website or like one of our tools. Like click here to email your MP, do stuff like that, and push through. So it will ask you what you want to optimize for. There are constraints on how much text you can put on an image, because it will give you like a certain character limit in the text below the ad. But then if you have too much text on the image itself as like a way to circumvent that, it'll yell at you and it won't let you do it. There is a review process. So when you submit an ad, it takes up to 24 hours, usually a little less, but up to 24 hours. It could even take more if there's challenges for them to approve it. So it won't go live right away. So factor that into your calculation. And if it is election oriented, you must not let it run on election day. You have to pause it before election day. That is illegal to have it run on election day. I would, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I would double check to make sure on the precise stipulations there, but I know like you can't run ads on election day. You're muted, Lynn, sorry.
Sorry, they always let you indicate the last day of your ad, right? The ad period. Yep. So when you set it up, it should be safe enough.
Yep, yeah. And you can set it up to be, X amount of time, X amount of days, and you can say, I want to spend X amount of dollars over that time, or I want to spend X amount of dollars per day. So you have some options on that, and it won't spend over. And it's kind of like a bidding process, so the price will change. One thing that we often do is if you have the time and capacity, we'll test different versions against each other. There's a way to do that, to A/B test it, and or just run a couple different ads at once, and it will tell you the outcome and the cost per outcome. So like cost per click or cost per view. And that is really useful. The lower the cost per view, the better it's doing, basically. So we will try a few of them, and if one of them is like wildly outperforming and just much better cost per view or cost per click, we'll put the bulk of the spending on that one. There is a higher level Facebook ads account called it's like business.facebook.com. And it's a bit tricky to get set up on that. And it's honestly so much to it that I find it's like not like, I just find it, I don't use it as much because it's so complicated. But if you really want to get into like a power user, that's the place to do it. If you really want to do lots of very precise targeting and lots of all the like specialty things, that's where you can do that. And that was something like I wouldn't feel capable of training you on that. That would be something I'd recommend.
Where would we do the specialty thing? Where is that?
Business.facebook.com.
Business. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a whole new. There's a whole new world of stuff in that one, and it's like very fancy. I don't know if it's still at that, but yeah, it is still at that. Business.facebook.com, and there's like lots of webinars and stuff that'll go into all of that, but it's like a full-time job. But the basic stuff will do it. You can also use them together, the advertising and the organic stuff. When you have an ad going live, like if you are promoting a post, you can send people to that post to comment on it to boost the engagement as well. If you are doing advertising, you're going to get, like, no matter how good your targeting is, you're also going to get people who engage because they hate what you're doing. So it's good to have a plan in place for how to deal with that. Remember, engagement's engagement. So they're actually helping you. And at the same time, it can be like discouraging to have people being like, wow, screw you or whatever. So there are settings where you can hide those. So other people don't see them, but the people who post them are not notified that other people can't see them. So I do that if it's like really offensive. If it's not particularly offensive, it's just like politically like disagreeing, like they're arguing with us or they're mad at us about stuff. I'll usually just thank them for the engagement, and then that shuts them up, because then what can they do? If they respond, they're just helping more, and that's what they don't want to do.
And other people who are looking at the feed can respond to it, which is good, right?
Yep, more engagement. Yep, exactly. So getting people, and that's why you see a lot of these like really successful meme pages will post like loosely controversial topics and then say, what do you think? And then people bicker in the comments, and there it goes. There's their engagement blowing right up.
I've got a question about that. So say, I'm not sure about Facebook, but on Twitter, say we put out a post and someone is kind of like a climate denier and he's got this little spiel and we start engaging with him, would that push his tweet up further than some of maybe the more progressive, more like climate-y folks?
It can. It's pretty rare for a reply tweet to get more engagement than the main tweet. So it's pretty unlikely, not impossible. And when that happens, if a reply tweet is getting more engagement, it's like a ratio, it's called. And so it means something's gone wrong at that point. But it is okay. What I would usually advise is that the main account is usually, they're getting their message out, and typically is not the account I would use to reply with. I would have someone who's an ally reply and debunk their point. And if you've got someone who's like making like easily debunked claims, it's quite useful to have them just get in an argument with you and have someone who's back and forth with them to handle their complaints, to show that you're winning the argument, and to get the engagement. It's pretty good.
Okay. There's that hashtag climate brawl that I found. It's just, that's funny going every once in a while.
Yeah. But you don't want to do it on their stuff, right? You don't want to do it on, like, if they have a big tweet, you don't want to reply to it there and do it to them. It's hard to do. So if you do see stuff like that you want to reply to, screenshot their tweet. And then you tweet that out and reply to it that way. And then
okay, that's a good tip. Thank you. Because I was always worried about, I don't want to make them more.
If you've got something where you're just like, I got to reply to this, then you screenshot it, put it up in there. Cool. No worries. Thanks, Lynn. See you later. Cool. Let's see if I'm gonna I wrote back the questions you asked. How to grow team. Yeah, if you're looking to grow like a social media team, I mean, it's just like any other volunteer team in terms of how you manage it, but it's like some advice that I would have generally is we get better uptake on our teams if we're very clear about like the expectation, and we do have people sign what we call a contract. It's not a contract, it's not binding, but it is like, I agree to adhere to the code of conduct, and I agree that I'm going to set aside 2 to 3 hours a week or whatever the time is for the next X period of time to be part of this team and to contribute. And then having regular check-ins, but not too many, like one every couple of weeks is good, where there's accountability and people are just reminded like, oh yes, I'm part of this, and community building as well.
So if we're having a team, so it sounds like Kathleen's really good at writing, and then I'm not great at it, but I can help with some of the graphics, and like I'm most comfortable on like Instagram, and then I just copy onto Facebook because I don't understand Facebook. But so what do you think about using things like Sprout and Hootsuite and things like that to organize a team? Or Canva even has a group thing as well. Do you use those?
I don't. Lead Now does. So I think they're great. They're good tools, and they do bring a lot of value. It's another layer of stuff to manage, but sometimes it can make things easier. It depends on the sophistication of your volunteers as well. But I would say that probably what you're looking at structurally is some like core team of like you and Kathleen and maybe 1 or 2 others who are sort of the organizers, and that like certainly like Hootsuite would make sense for you all. And then building out not below, but like alongside a team of amplifiers or engagers who can boost your work and can be part of doing your outreach. When you do have like a tweet storm planned or a day of action plan, you can have them be the people who are doing the like sourcing influencers and and doing the group chats and DMs and stuff like that, and being ready to engage. Speaking of influencers, I shouldn't miss this. So I talked about the micro influencers and how to reach them. There's other ways to do that where you can pay them to do your messages, and it doesn't cost very much. And it's there's like marketplaces that allow you to find influencers at various levels who will do that for a fee. And there's many of them, so I don't have like a recommendation for which one. They're all pretty analogous in my experience, but they have like a list of influencers of various levels. You'll put in, I'm looking for people who would be open to talking about climate change to their list. And the marketplace may say, oh, there's like style influencers who are doing like like nature-based jewelry or whatever, that may be a good overlap. And they'll give you like a list of them, and they'll say, here's some with 5,000 followers, here's some with 50,000 followers. Of course, the bigger accounts have higher costs. And the marketplace, all they do is connect you. You talk to them, to the influencer directly then once you've done it, and then the marketplace handles the contracting, but they commit to X number of posts, and usually it's their own words, their own messaging, but they'll take your key messages into account. And
is that Twitter or Facebook?
All of them, Instagram, Facebook, okay, and Twitter all do this. It's biggest on Instagram by a wide margin. That's very common in Instagram. It's much less common elsewhere. But they can all do that. And I mean, a lot of accounts will do that, even if they don't do it in a marketplace. The bigger accounts will, in exchange for $1,000, will tweet out to our 1 million followers or whatever, right?
So do you think that I don't know what the price is, but do you think that might be a good way for us to go versus paying for ads on Facebook?
It depends on what you're trying to do. In terms of visibility to particular demographics, sometimes an influencer is really good. But sometimes, I mean, the Facebook ads are quite inexpensive for pretty broad reach. And then, I mean, if you're looking for just visibility too, we haven't talked about it, but Google ads are actually really effective as well. Mm-hmm. And there's different kinds of Google ads, but Google ads get served not only to Google searches, where you can say, anyone who searches for climate change in Toronto can see, my Toronto climate group. That's one. But also Google Ads serves directly into Android apps and all those different like apps on your phone, goes into YouTube. You can get ads on YouTube through there. So it's a lot of broad reach through there too. And I didn't cover it because it's not social media, but that's a good place to look for additional advertising reach.
So Tim, can you give me an example of like an influencer for particularly for climate change?
Yeah, we did an influencer ad campaign during the election, and we reached out to, we did a marketplace. I forget the one, but I could find out for you if you want. And found influencers who were largely in the youth wellness space. And so I think one was like a yoga instructor, and they were all pretty younger and all on Instagram. And we told them about our endorsed candidates and why they were endorsed, because they're climate champions, cross-partisan. We do find that if you get explicitly partisan, a lot less uptake from influencers. They're just less interested in that. But because it was cross-partisan, we're like, no, it's just climate change is bad and we should fix it. Pretty easy message, especially for younger people. And they were just, they had, I mean, they weren't huge influencers. I think they were between 5,000 and 15,000 followers on Instagram. And they just did I think it was 2 or 3 messages each, where they would go on and they did a little video and they were like, here's why I care about this and I'm going to vote and I hope you'll vote too. And it was like a get out the vote message.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember how much around that cost?
It wasn't that much, I don't think. It was a few $100 each, if I recall correctly, but I don't remember exactly. I could certainly find out though.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I need to, I've got a meeting at 2, but I just was wondering about setting up the different accounts for OCEC. I think for right now, Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think right now they're really pushing for April 20th. So I'm assuming we're going to have to use everyone's platform anyway for that. But do you think that for a campaign such as this, that has, I don't know how many signatories and people involved, we should have our own registered platforms?
I think if it's a publicly visible campaign, I think it doesn't hurt to have, particularly a Twitter account, less so the others. My general advice is if you're not going to use the platform or you're going to use it sporadically, just don't bother. To have, you don't want an unmaintained page. It looks bad. People will look for it, find it, be like, oh, this is not active, it's dead. So just don't. But for something if you have a campaign like this, Twitter, it's good to have a place where people can talk about the campaign and tag what they're talking about. So the coalition, I would say it makes sense to have a flag head account for this campaign. At least through the course of it. You can always shut it down or deactivate it if you want later. But that way people can find it, they can tag you, and that way you'll know when they're talking about you, which is helpful. Part of what you're trying to do is get people talking. Right?
Okay, and I'm now really got to go, but I want to keep asking questions. I'm really confused about the hashtag selection, because like you don't want to get stuck in like when millions of other people are using the same hashtag and then you get lost, but then you don't want to be out on your own and no one's using that hashtag, so no one finds you. So is there like a ratio mix, or like do you create your own hashtag and then get people to that? I don't know, like how do we do that effectively?
Yeah, if you're doing a tweet storm, you do want to have one that's very clearly identifiable. So I will look and see, look on the latest uses of a hashtag. I'll type it in the search and see if anyone's using it. If it hasn't been used in like 2-3 years, sure, great. Or like one account somewhere in like Europe is tweeting about it to mean soccer or something, like whatever. So you can use that. And then I would also usually include one more established one, like climate action or et cetera, so that other people can find it. I would put no more than 2 hashtags in most tweets, because it gets anything beyond that gets a little overwhelming.
Okay, and same with Instagram. No
Instagram,
more.
you can put a ton, put as many as you want on Instagram. A lot of times people will put a few in the caption, but then put like a comment that's nothing but hashtags.
Right.
Yeah, there's really no, use all of them.
Okay, so I've got to go. Thank you so much. This is so great. I think, Kathleen, if you stick on, I don't want to cancel the meeting, but thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah, no worries. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks, Tim.
No worries. Kathleen, do you have any other questions before we go?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so you're going to send that, you said you've got a document or something you can send?
Yep, I'll send you the documents, and I'll get the research things that she asked for as well.
All right, yeah, I'm sort of overloaded now, but if I have any questions, I'll shoot them off to you.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Okay, see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.